The violent LA riots are still happening, in different kind of aspects, but you also have now a pushback. You have pushback from, it feels like your favorite Thanksgiving uncle who just sits down and is like, I got some hot takes for you. Okay. My tone has changed over the last couple years, and, old red-pilled Fetterman is out there. John Fetterman now saying that this is ridiculous, that we have taken this too far, and the Democrats are going to be the one that pay the price for it. Here was his tweet exactly. I unapologetically stand for free speech, peaceful demonstration, and immigration. But this is not that. Look, I agree with him on that. This is anarchy and true chaos. My party loses the moral high ground when we refuse to condemn setting cars on fire, destroying buildings, and assaulting law enforcement. I mean, it's almost like he is setting up himself to become an independent, then become a Republican, and move his way into there, because this is not what the talking points right now actually coming from the left. It's not the talking points coming from Gavin Newsom, the own governor here. He's more saying embrace it, embrace the chaos.
And they are actually the state. They filed their lawsuit yesterday against the Trump administration, trying to get them to get rid of the National Guard there. But what this also boils down to is kind of what we talked about yesterday. Some of the talking points you're hearing out of the Democrat mayor of LA, as well as the governor of the state of California, is they're saying that if ICE would leave and the National Guard would leave, the chaos would go away. Well, that actually is precisely the reason that President Trump felt like he needed to send in the National Guard, because they are saying that the federal law enforcement of our immigration laws needs to stop. When he talked about a rebellion, that goes right into that language that's in the Insurrection Act that says that a rebellion can be when it is impossible to carry out and actually enforce the nation's laws, federal law. When they are saying things like ICE needs to get out of California, they are saying you are not allowed to enforce federal law here. And that is exactly why the president said it was necessary for him to federalize the National Guard. So even the talking points are conflicting when they're saying we don't need that here if ICE would just leave. That actually feeds into the president's argument. When you have someone like Senator Fetterman saying my party loses the moral high ground when we refuse to condemn setting cars on fire, the most condemnation coming from the left is saying, well, the only reason it's happening is because of Donald Trump.
John Fetterman, who, again, has been a staunch supporter of Israel. Now, of course, he isn't someone who's going to vote for a lot of Republican causes. He's not a pro-life guy. He is certainly not he was against the big, beautiful bill and talked about the reasons because he doesn't want to see SNAP cut, a few things like that. That's not uncommon for John Fetterman, but he has taken an honest perspective, and I like that about him. Just like even you can disagree with someone completely, but if you believe they're at least being honest with themselves, I think that's a virtue. It's like Bernie Sanders. I disagree with maybe 100% of what he says. Maybe more than 100%. I don't know if that's possible, but maybe more than 100%. But you know who I think believes what he's saying? Bernie Sanders. I think John Fetterman believes what he's saying here. And he's saying that this is creating more rot within his party. And look, you saw what it looked like a couple years ago. And the Democrats had the opportunity to potentially stay in office for a very long time. And they couldn't keep it together. And these kind of things, when you see what's happening in the streets of California, you do get concerned and you do wonder what we're going to do to fix it. And how do you do it and not be a PR nightmare on both sides? And John Fetterman is out there saying it, so you got to give it up for him. Dad, it feels like a big throwback to some of the old cases that we used to have. You think it'd be settled law by now, but Will, why don't you give us a recap of what this is? And then obviously we're going to get his feedback.
So this is a 9th grade student in New York at Carmel High School who wanted to have a Christian club, which is something that we will learn has been settled law for about 35 years, thanks to the ACLJ. But they kept pushing back. She finally was able to form this club, and she put up handwritten posters that talked about the Good News Club. It had Bible verse citations on it, not even the text of it. Said it was open to all and said that people could join this Good News Club. The posters were torn down by the school because it had Bible verses on them. They forced her to change the name from Good News Club to something else. And then once she was having in this club a video series about spiritual warfare, about dealing with cultural issues and things of that nature, the school then stepped in and blocked that and said, we have to review any religious material to approve yes or no whether or not you can use this. There's a little case called Mergens that, Jay, you argued. Doesn't this seem to conflict with the outcome of that case?
Yeah, and that decision is, as you said, almost 35 years old. It was 8-1 in our favor. There was one dissent. It was Justice Stevens. And the Supreme Court unanimous, or 8-1, said that these Bible clubs have the right to meet on the same terms and conditions as any other club. And let me tell you what a school cannot do. A school cannot go in and review the religious content of the Bible club to determine whether they can have a meeting or not, because that not only violates the free speech and freedom of association, but that clearly violates the Establishment Clause and shows a hostility towards religion. So New York, interestingly, has been particularly aggressive even after multiple Supreme Court wins. We had Mergens, which was out of Nebraska, but we also had a major case involving religion in the schools in New York at the Supreme Court about 3 years after Mergens, called Lamb's Chapel. And we won that one 9-0. But again, it took subsequent litigation for these New York school districts to comply. So this is ridiculous. This is settled law, and we're going to do whatever's necessary to rectify the situation for these students. But the school cannot be in the business of reviewing and approving content of a religious club. I mean, think about the Establishment Clause says there should be no entanglement with religion. And what's more entangling than we're going to review the contents of your prayer or the contents of your Bible verses you're picking?
And usually it comes down to some very overzealous members of the administration that come in and they've heard the term they've heard the term separation of church and state, but they don't even know what it means, Dad.
No, they don't. And this is such a clear violation of the Establishment Clause, which is where the whole relationship between church and state arrives out of. And they are taking every action in violation of that clause of the Constitution, whether it's the pulling down the posters, whether it's monitoring the content of the religious material that the group's going to use, or whether it's their meeting in the first place. So, they're just totally wrong here. And again, 35 years after Mergens, you're still fighting over this stuff. But the truth of the matter is we got to be vigilant. We're going to protect these students as if it was Mergens all over again.
Mergens was even reaffirmed by the Supreme Court in a case that was Good News Club versus Milford School District. The irony that the club...
Yeah, we worked on that case as well.
Right.
Yeah.
The club is named the same thing that had another Supreme Court precedent that affirmed Mergens. It just, how do these school districts think they can get away with this?
It's interesting, and I hate to say it's a regional problem, but it is. And New York has been particularly hostile to these students who've had great impacts on their high school campuses, and they're just wrong. I mean, the school system is wrong, the administration is wrong, and we need to get these students justice, certainly before the school year begins again. We will have this rectified, no question about it.